One thing that I am definitely thankful for is the return of Dolphins football this weekend. We got you covered. Final prep for the Saints here on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. And a special thank you to each of you who have helped make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. We are in final prep for the Saints. Just got done doing the squad show with Z and Grease. A great conversation around the NFL landscape, how the Dolphins fit into that puzzle, if you will. Mike McDaniel spoke this morning. We got some seemingly positive news around more than one player potentially returning for the Dolphins, including players that were on the injury report but not on injured reserve, and players that were on injured reserve. I want to talk a little bit more about the Tyler Shough dynamic of this football game, and also one thing that I think could be a fireable offense if the Dolphins do, which would be the thing. We'll talk about all that here today on the show. Personnel reinforcements for the Dolphins, first and foremost. Mike McDaniel spoke on Friday, live press conference before practice, and he dared to use the word optimistic about more than one player. And if you know Mike McDaniel code, optimistic is usually code for, yeah, he's probably going to go. Usually applicable most when talking about a player who was limited in practice, but he used it about two players that are on injured reserve and have their activation windows open. That being, of course, Austin Jackson, the starting right tackle, and Darren Waller, the team's tight end, who has 4 touchdowns on like 50 snaps this year. But I think that there is potential there to be needle-moving infusions of talent, not necessarily in a matchup that you should need it for. And the Dolphins, right, let's be honest, we're 4-7. It's not really like the Dolphins can sit here and thumb their nose at any team across the NFL because the Dolphins sit at 4-7. I do think their talent is indicative of a better record than that. I certainly think it took a while for that to gel. But you've got a Saints team that's coming into this game with Alvin Kamara's might not go at all. Chris Olave was a non-participant on Thursday with a back injury. The team traded Rashid Shaheed, the team's best offensive lineman on the interior, is out. They made a quarterback change to a rookie quarterback who's making just his first of a handful of starts. They've struggled against non-common opponents the last 2 months to stop the run. I've got some good players. I really like their linebacker core. I like their safety unit a lot. They get some young corners that should be competitive. Well, it's not like the Dolphins are not that team that can afford to roll out of bed and show up on Sunday and expect a win by 10 points. Case in point, what happened in Week 11 against the Commanders, right? Jaden Daniels doesn't play. Terry McLaurin doesn't play. You need overtime. Who's suspended, right? They have players suspended for this game. Deron Payne's suspended. They're down their top 2 edge guys. Nevertheless, you need overtime to beat the Marcus Mariota-led Commanders. You're not that team this year. There were years and years past, and not that long ago, including Miami in 2023, that if you had a down opponent on the schedule, you'd say, yeah, you might spot the Panthers 14 points or spot the Giants 14 points or whatever it was in those games in October of 2023. But you're going to run off the points you need at the end. You're going to hit the explosive plays, and you're going to win the game by 2 touchdowns. You ain't that team this year. But I do look at the talent disparity that exists with these two teams, Miami being at home and having the extra rest stacked on top of that. And now you're talking about potentially getting Austin Jackson and Darren Waller back. And set some expectations for this football game. And I think the most important thing that the Dolphins can do, and I said this on the squad show at the very end of the show, don't allow the return of Darren Waller and the potential return of Austin Jackson, the potential return of both of those guys. Do not allow their return to change your formula for winning football games. Because what it took you for the first 7 weeks of the season was a lot of trial and error, some forced changes because of injuries, to find what's working for you to play winning football. You have found that with this group. And it's a totally separate conversation to talk about how sustainable it is long term, what the ceiling is of it year over year, and what's best for you to go about your business right now. And there's some elements of what they have that I really like. But there's going to be games that you play where you roll in and you're not going to be the team that has the talent advantage. I think you do this week. So to take the time off and then change dramatically how you approach playing feels like inviting extra chaos just because you've got a few guys back in the lineup. I'd really like to see them amplify what the Dolphins have been doing offensively, which is running the ball with great effectiveness, loading up in the heavy stuff. And obviously Darren Waller is going to help with that. Your 13 package now looks like it could get really excited with Julian Hill as the Y and the blocker. And then you've got flex guys like Dulcich and Darren Waller. I want to see more of that. I want to see you go heavy and go with Waller and Waddle on the field and Brunskill and Julian Hill. I want to see you go 13 with, or go 22 at times, and it's Waller, it's Dulcich, it's Jalen Waddle as the wide receiver, and then Devon Achane and Ollie Gordon as the running backs, right? Like you can now, because you have that tight end piece that can be so multiple and can serve as a wide receiver, but can serve as a blocker, can serve as a tight end, and can serve as a slot, can serve as a red zone target. I think it gives you more fuel to the fire to what you've been doing. So I hope that's how they approach the infusion of these guys to the lineup. I'm not going to sit here and hold my breath that we're going to see Larry Borum at guard, even though I think we should. But you never know, right? I don't know. I don't get the sense based off McDaniel this week that we're going to see James Daniels this season. And if that's the case, then thanks for coming on the squad. We appreciated you having on, but we're going to move on, right? Like we get to the end of the season and I see James Daniels play 3 snaps this year. We did that show already. I'm going to be ready to be talking about who we can get in right guard for a similar budget, or drafting somebody, or moving Jonas Avainai over to right guard long term. And we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But some good news with Darren Waller and Austin Jackson, but then also names like Rasul Douglas, who Mike McDaniel said we will see Rasul Douglas this week. He said we'll see Aaron Brewer, Benito Jones with no designations on their injury report. They were guys that were limited early in the week with practice. So was Jalen Waddle. They're good to go. They're good to roll. It's been a while since it's been the last day of November, which is when the Dolphins will play this game. And this whole group's going to be raring to go. If they get these 2 guys on the roster, they'll have to move some things around and change some personnel. We'll see what that looks like as well. But I want to talk about Tyler Shough and the Saints offense against the Dolphins. We're going to get into that next here on this Friday episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Make sure you guys stick with us. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on all of the action than at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or if you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at bigger payouts. It keeps every game more exciting, especially if your team is the one that's making that late-game push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. You ever have like that getting over a cold, tickle in the throat, won't quit, maybe not have to talk and monologue into a microphone for 30 minutes, but 'tis the season, right? Got a couple young kiddos at home, and if you see me hitting a few extra shots on the C4 here throughout the course of the show, it's because I'm trying to not have this tickle in my throat that blows up and goes nuclear on me. But let's talk about Tyler Shough, who is a uncharacteristically old rookie. And there's no shame in that, right? The talking point is Juwan Johnson and him were teammates in 2019 in Oregon when he was the backup to Justin Herbert, right? That's how long Tyler Shough was in college. So Shough, thus far on the season, a 1-2 record as a starter, 64% completion, 6.6 yards per attempt, 3 passing touchdowns to 3 interceptions. 26 years old, was drafted 40th overall. Really struggled with durability throughout the course of his time in college, in which he played for Oregon and Texas Tech and Louisville, right? He'd been around the block a little bit. So he's not your traditional quarterback in the sense of a rookie who he didn't really get the reps in college because he was banged up a lot, but he's much more mature as far as like his I think about what I thought I knew at the game of with the game of football at like 20 or 21 versus what I thought I knew at 26 versus what I think I know now at 36. And right, each one of those is miles apart. But there's a different task that's involved in doing. And that's where for Tyler Shough, you look at the game-by-game performance of what he has and the success that he had against Carolina in a 17-7 win versus games against the Rams, games against the Bucks, games against the Falcons. He was sacked 5 times. He had an 11% sack rate against the Falcons. Right, his adjusted net yards per attempt in that game was 3.5. That's bad for running the ball, let alone passing the ball. This is a player who I think this is a big Anthony Weaver spot. When you look at, there's 45 quarterbacks across the NFL who have attempted at least 50 pass attempts this year. When you consider how they rank against pressure, I'll give you Tua Tagovailoa is middle of the pack. His passer rating 65 against pressure. That ranks 23rd in the NFL out of 45 quarterbacks. Tyler Shough is 15 points lower. He's in the stratosphere with names like Cam Ward as a rookie quarterback, Geno Smith in a disastrously bad Raiders offense, J.J. McCarthy, who's performing in many metrics like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL in recent history, let alone this season, Russell Wilson, Jake Browning, Cooper Rush, Joe Flacco. Davis Mills, rookie Jackson Dart. That's the company that Tyler Shough is keeping. When you pressure him, and here's the good news for Miami and the Dolphins' perspective in this game. Despite moving on from Jalen Phillips, the Dolphins are actually one of the better teams in the league in pressuring opposing quarterbacks. It has not led to sacks, and that's where you need finishers. But if you go back to week 4, if you start the week range in week 4, and you go week 4 to week 12, where would you venture to guess that the Dolphins rank in the NFL as far as pressuring opposing quarterbacks? I could tell you that they rank top 10. From a pressure percentage, they're 8th. 39.4% of opposing quarterback dropbacks since week 4. So almost 40%. There's 5 teams in the NFL with a pressure rate above 40% since week 4. It's the Cowboys, the Vikings, the Seahawks, the Texans, and the Eagles. Miami's in a block of teams with Detroit, New England, the Rams, and the Browns. Those are all the other teams that are between 40 and 38% of pressure. That's not bad company to keep. And that's since week 8. So, yeah, you played the Jets in there, but you played the Chargers in there. You played the Panthers in there. You played the Browns in there, who they couldn't. You lost that game by 24 points because you couldn't do anything offensively in that game. And that game script very much got away from you. You played Baltimore in that stretch. You played Buffalo in that stretch. You've played some good teams in that stretch since week 4. It's really glaring to look at the splits from the first 3 weeks of the season from a pressure perspective to to week 4 to present day. Because week 4 to present day, you're 8th in the NFL, almost 40%. It's 39.4% of opposing dropbacks you pressure the quarterback. In weeks 1 through 3, the Dolphins were not only dead last in the NFL in this statistic, it was 25%. It's an extra 15% pressure in the first and since week 4 than what it has been in the first 3 weeks. 25% pressure rate the first 3 weeks. And what's perhaps like the cruel joke about that is the Dolphins have 6 sacks in the first 3 weeks of the season. And from week 4 to week 12, I don't know how many sacks the Dolphins have rushing opposing quarterbacks. 15. So their per game sack rate is not improving, but the pressure rate has improved almost exponentially. You apply all this to a game against New Orleans with a quarterback like Tyler Shough, who's in the bottom quadrant, right? You see the graphs, and you know up and to the left and top right Tua for 2022 and 2023 for all the efficiency statistics. Top right's good. Bottom right is good in one stat, bad in the other. Top left is good in the opposite stat and bad in the opposite stat. And bottom left is you're bad in both. Tyler Shough is firmly planted in the bottom left quadrant of the chart when you're thinking about passer rating and EPA being the other one. So when you are, I want to give the Tyler Shough EPA with pressure. Amongst quarterbacks in the NFL, when pressured, Tyler Shough's EPA is minus 0.6. That's almost a full point behind the best quarterback in the NFL. There's only a handful of quarterbacks in the league who like really shine this year, and that can still change. But incredibly enough, Marcus Mariota is the highest rated EPA for dropback. Maybe this is a Dolphins defense statistic in week 11 stat. But Matthew Stafford is number 2. Mac Jones, CJ Stroud, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. These are the top names. So Tyler Shough's middle of the pack in this stat. It's just that Tua Tagovailoa is exceptionally lower in this stat. He's actually got a worse EPA under pressure per attempt than what Tyler Shough does. Tua is still better than names like Daniel Jones, Lamar Jackson, Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy, Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield. There's some good quarterbacks that are performing very badly under pressure this year. So for Tyler Shough in Miami, you have this intersection of passer rating, guys making plays, precision of the offense. It's not really there when you're able to pressure him. So that being an area where the Dolphins defense, maybe the sack numbers don't show it, but they have had great success, top 8 in the NFL in pressuring opposing quarterbacks since week 4. That is the matchup to watch for me. Shough, ironically enough, does not measure as well as Spencer Rattler does with EPA per dropback under pressure. So arguably, at least in that lens of evaluating quarterbacks, not even the best option on the roster, but that's the guy you spent the top 40 pick on. You kind of have to know. Do not let this be the game where a young kid comes out and has a get right and a breakout and an aha moment. You already let that happen with Bryce Young this season. Do not let it happen to you again. Can't happen, which is a great segue for us into Fireable offense, ? We're going to touch on that next here, Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. To me, you're in a window now where it's the end game, right? You've got 6 games left to play. You're 4-7. I think there is a talent disparity between these two teams that has me expecting the Dolphins to win, cover the 5.5 point spread, yada, yada, yada. I expect that to happen. If it doesn't, I think you're in a window now where, like, Mike McDaniel went on the record before the bye saying, "This is what I think of how this team is going to handle the service interruption and being away from the building for 2 weeks. This is how I think we're going to handle it. This is how I think that the guys are well equipped to handle it. This is why I think it's going to be a good thing for us as a team." If it doesn't happen that way, is it a fireable offense for Mike McDaniel? This would be a really ugly game to lose at home off a bye. It would be a it would, for me, undo a lot of the good graces of the Buffalo game. You can't be a team that dominates Buffalo on your home field and then has New Orleans while you have extra rest come to town and beat you. Can't happen. Can't happen. And if it does happen, I think you're in that window of the season where you have to start lopping heads as we go, right? And the worry here is if you don't, well, if you don't, then everybody's going to go, right? So it's okay. If you have a major letdown, who do you deem as an appropriate person to let go? And the owner at any point could choose it to be Mike McDaniel. I would not blame, because if you lose and you drop to 4-8 and the writing's on the wall and you kind of know where the season's going and you've already made a commitment to change the direction of the team, I don't think you have to sit here and win out for Mike McDaniel to keep his job. But that's kind of the perspective I have of this game coming in with the team that you're getting ready to play, that it would unwind a lot of good graces for me that we've seen as far as the way of progress. It would be the ultimate progress staller. And if that meant that you did not have the right thumbprint on the pulse of your team to know what they needed to come ready to play for this one, it would be just the latest example of a team that was not prepared in the right way to get ready to play a game. And you're also in a window where, like, you might want to start evaluating other options. If you're Mike McDaniel and you win, but you eke it out, you might want to think about making a change with your assistant staff on offense and get a look at somebody else stepping into a role, because you know, if I survive this, I'm probably going to have to shake stuff up. So it doesn't have to be like hey, Dolphins lost to the Saints, Mike McDaniel needs to be fired. But I do think that's a testament to kind of the ground that we stand on as a team right now, that for every game that a major letdown would happen, the way in which I think losing to the Saints would be a major letdown, the team scored 20 points twice this season, and one of them they needed a defensive touchdown to do it. That team can't come in and beat you. I'm sorry, just can't, especially if you're coaching and if your guys are playing for your jobs, because that's kind of where we're at. And if they do come in and beat you, then somebody, I think, has to answer for that. And I hope that's not the case, because I want to see them continue to win games. I want to see them win all their games and bust several narratives along the way, because that can give you inspiration for what it can look like with somebody else at the top of the organization that's kind of leading the thing. Oh, I have my feelings on what is right. I have my apprehensions about half resets and half measures. And if it were me, like, I understand the risk you take in doing so. And I'd probably be somebody, if I were Stephen Ross, that would be more comfortable with the sunk cost of letting other people go in order to know that I want to get everybody in here that's organizationally aligned and guarantee that that's the case. But sometimes you give a guy a full command over a football operation, you hire a head coach, and they're fighting within 2 years anyway, because they couldn't agree on whether or not they were going to lose games intentionally or whatever. And then whatever quarterback they pick. And like that happened to the Dolphins last time. Now, Chris was the GM by title and then hired Brian Flores, and that didn't work out. But Chris was technically a holdover as the GM by title from 2016 onward. So let's hope it doesn't come to that. Let's hope the Dolphins just come out and play inspired football. That would make things a lot easier for another week. Kyle Krabs, you keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your Friday. And I'll be back to talk to you all again in the immediate aftermath of the Dolphins' Week 13 contest against New Orleans Saints.